Hey, you awesome folks! Thanks for taking this journey of discovery with your guide, Keith Haney. You're listening to the Becoming Bridge Builders podcast, your favorite podcast for everything from racial reconciliation to education innovation, justice reform, and leading change in the 21st century. This podcast is for people who love to be challenged with difficult topics, but want practical solutions to solve these challenging issues. Becoming Bridge Builders makes change possible. Each week on the podcast, Keith invites innovative thought leaders to share how they are building bridges in their area of expertise. You will hear breakthrough ideas and concepts that are changing the world. He's featuring guests who are best-selling authors, leaders at Microsoft, entrepreneurs, leading educators, professors, lawyers, and so many more. Listen in to learn how you can be the bridge to the change you are seeking.
Welcome to Becoming Bridge Builders podcast, where we bring you conversations that inspire connection, transformation, and hope. I am your host, Keith Haney, and today we have an incredible guest who's dedicated his life to helping teens and those who guide them build confidence and resilience. Chuck Bernard is a best-selling author, master educator, mindset mentor for over 30 years of experience. Through his groundbreaking methods and personal journey of turning grief into purpose, Chuck has helped thousands overcome anxiety and emotional shutdown. His new book, Confidence with Teens, A New Chapter for the Family, is a game changer for parents, educators, and coaches everywhere. Chuck, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on your show.
It's good to have you on. I'm going to ask you my favorite question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I've ever received? Oh, be humble. You never know when life will knock you down. And, there's that a parable in the Bible about being not sitting or placing yourself at one of the premier seats in case somebody else above you comes in. And that has always kind of stuck with me. And I really learned the value of that as I got older too.
Yeah, that's always helpful because you don't want to be the one who has to. I'm sorry, that's reserved for somebody else.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So your new book entitled "Confidence with Teens." What inspired you to write this book?
With all the years that I've worked with teens and all, there's just so many different stories about transformation and how it comes about. And I saw so many families struggling with lots of ways. For parents, parenting is a really hard job, right? Our kids don't come with instruction manuals. And teens today, I think, even have that many more challenges. So I wanted to turn it into all that I learned and stuff into a story. So I basically, the family, the characters in the book are based on kind of a composite of a whole bunch of different people, families, children that I've worked with over the years. And the mentor in that is a composite of from my own experiences, but also people who mentored me. So kind of wove all that into a story about the Jackson family.
I love that. We always write a book thinking we're trying to fill a gap somewhere in the work that's already out there. What gap were you hoping this book would fill in the lives of especially teens and families?
I think one of the reasons I've made it into a story like that is there's self-help books and there's lots of books on parenting out there, but they are, do this, do that. There's chapters. There's almost read like textbooks, and stories, parables are powerful teaching tools. And that was kind of like, I thought that was missing out there. So when I sat down to write, I'm like, no, this can't be just another how-to kind of book. It needs to be a story about essentially real people. It's a fictional family, but essentially these are real stories and real advice and practical wisdom, but told by real characters. And I think that's what was, well, in my mind anyways, that's what was kind of missing in the marketplace. And that's what I wanted to fill.
So give us an overview of your book. Tell us kind of, you talk about it's a story, kind of tell us how the book is laid out.
So the Jackson family have teenage children, and they're involved in sports, and the teenagers are going through some tough times, and a stranger comes into their life accidentally as a father is going to a soccer game and stands in his usual place. An older gentleman kind of comes up and stands near him and ends up striking up a conversation with him and ends up inviting him to a dinner that he's hosting. And the father and mom, who ends up meeting him as well, are kind of taken aback that they actually find themselves agreeing to go and meet this total stranger. And then that total stranger, there's another family there at this dinner that the parents know each other because their kids are involved in sports, and it just builds this mentorship, and it weaves through the different challenges that the teenagers go through, and how the families struggle with dealing with some of those, and what sort of advice is given by the mentor. It's actually set up to be the potential of a series of books. And this first one is just on transforming your base mindset. That's kind of what the theme approach is. And there are potentialities for other ones, which follow through basically the mentoring kind of program I do. So you transform the mindset, you work on building some habits so that once you've kind of cleared things that are been getting in your way, obstacles, usually in the unconscious, related to the beliefs you have and values, conflicts, and all that. You want habits to help you keep, another metaphor I use is weeding the garden. So you want to keep the garden weeded. So you need habits to do that. And then there is building a positive mindset of a champion, with all those traits and characteristics that go into being able to be successful in your life, regardless of the storms that you will run into, and we all will run into them. So it stands on its own, but it has the idea in my head was, at some point I'm going to get to writing the rest of the the rest of the series.
I love that. You talk about rewiring the mindset rather than relying on traditional talk therapy. Can you explain how that works and why that is effective for teens?
Yeah, our mindset guides everything, right? We are a product of our memories, and those memories have shaped our beliefs, our values, decisions have, all these things that kind of filter our reality. And that's what makes up our mindset. And one of the stories I tell about Jimmy. Jimmy was a student who was not one of my programs in school, but I knew of Jimmy, and I was subbing for his regular teacher. And Jimmy had a one-on-one. He had an IEP, and he was getting kicked out of class all the time. And he was an eighth grader, and this had been going on all through middle school, and actually a little bit before then. And nothing was really working. And sure enough, I knew I'm filling in for his teacher, so I'm going to see all these middle school behaviors, right? And sure enough, within 5 minutes, he's going to need to be escorted out of the class. So the ed tech gives escort him out, and I got to ask Jimmy a question. So I go out in the hall with him, like, Jimmy, why are you such a pain in the butt to everybody? He looked right at me. He said, "That's because that's what I am." And it just, like, all the bells went off. I'm like, yeah. So everything they're doing with Jimmy was treating the symptoms and not the root cause, which were the beliefs that he had that had become so part of his identity. He was going to act like a pain in the butt because he had to maintain his identity. And over the years saw this all the time, whether it was a student who, "Oh, I can't do math. I'm not good at math," or "I'm not good at this," or "I'm not pretty enough," or "I'm not," and all these negative beliefs and self-talk and attitudes that came from those, just it became self-fulfilling prophecies, right? So any transformation that we were successful in doing always began by rewiring that thinking, rewiring those beliefs, breaking down those old ones, and then constantly trying to feed them new ones. So that's kind of where that basis on the work I do begins. It begins with that rewiring, that mindset transformation.
I love the example you talk about the garden of the soul because gardening is a great example. I mean, it's so hard for us to. I have a brown thumb, so anyone can garden. I really admire. But as you're trying to garden, you talk about the fact that you have to clear the emotional weeds and grow confidence. Kind of tell us, as you just talked about, like with Jimmy there, when you have that mindset that I'm a failure, I'm always gonna be the troublemaker. How do you help to not have those weeds of that belief keep growing back and you keep falling back into the mindset of this is just who I am. I really can't change.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful question, and let me kind of frame it in how I usually frame it, and then I'll kind of get to it. But the backstory behind that metaphor, I think, really helps to um, really kind of explain it well. But uh, in 2022, in June of 2022, my wife was diagnosed with cancer, and in July she passed away. So it was real quick, and obviously, just a blow that I wasn't ready for. And after her main service, we were having a smaller gathering, more intimate, not really a service, but gathering at our house. And there was one spot in our backyard that my wife and I had wanted to have a nice flower garden there. And we had planted some plants, but we never tended it. And I'm like, I'm going to make this is going to be Donna's garden. So I got some help from my sister, who's an expert gardener, and she helped me identify weeds from wildflowers, what plants we had, what plants we might want to plant, how good the soil was. So, some of the weeds you had to dig down deep in and pull out, and others were, more on the surface. And when we were done, it was beautiful. It was a wonderful tribute. Now, that winter, I had an opportunity to become a caretaker at my cousin's property that he inherited from his mom, and he wasn't around. I knew they didn't want to sell it or anything like that, so it was an opportunity for me to kind of move out. I joke that I couldn't kick my kids out who were living at the house, so I moved out. It was easier for me. So, anyways, I moved up, and early summer, late spring, I came back. I don't live that far away. Went out in the backyard, and there was a garden totally overgrown by weeds. And I hadn't taken responsibility for that garden. And that's that first step in doing this. We've got to get our students, our children, ready to understand that they need to be responsible for the weeds. Like, they may get blown in, storms may bring them in, pests may bring them in, pests may attack it, but what they are responsible for is doing the weeding and the cleaning up, and they can do that. They're also responsible for what they plant in and how they feed the garden. And there's a lot of different techniques. There's one I use primarily. It's a powerful technique called timeline therapy techniques that pretty quick and easy to help people release negative emotions they're holding on to, reframe these decisions that they made or beliefs that they're holding on to. But there are other patterns. I teach parents sometimes it's simply by asking different questions, like, kids start saying something about, oh, I can't do this. Oh, I'm no good. Oh, I'm so stupid. And asking a process question like, how'd you decide that? Or how do you know that? which is something I did with Jimmy too. Like, how did you decide that, Jimmy? And asking that question forces the person to kind of go inside, like, how did I do that? And once you've done that and they go inside, they've interrupted that pattern. And then you can embed a new one like, oh, well, from my perspective, you are actually quite intelligent with math or, whatever it is. You give them a reframe. And the more often you do that, the harder it becomes to play the old patterns. So that's part of the whole process. There's things that I can do in a coaching session. We can guide people even in groups. There's things parents can learn to do just by asking different questions. And the idea is to interrupt it off and off. And then we want to begin to help them build the habits to install new patterns. So long answer, but that's kind of the framework for what we need to do.
That's a great answer. I noticed that some of the core themes of your book really kind of resonate with me. And I love the one about confidence myths debunked. And these are three I picked up on. Confidence does not come solely from success. Shielding teens from failure doesn't build confidence. And academic and athletic excellence doesn't guarantee self-confidence. Maybe talk about some of the other things that you discovered about confidence from your book.
Yeah, it's interesting because confidence really does come within. And certainly when you are successful at something, you build confidence, right? So there is that natural cycle. But the truth of the matter is that your brain can't tell the difference between vivid imagination and reality. So the more often you tell yourself and you act as if you are good at something, the more you're sending those messages to your brain, the more you're actually beginning to wire those neurological connections to actually believe those things. So there are things that you want, I used to tell students, they're going to go take a science test or something. Go sit right next to a person, if you can, near them, of somebody you know is going to do really well on that test. And I want you to sit the way they sit. I want you to breathe the way they breathe. I want you to carry yourself physically the way they do. And I guarantee you, if you do that and you maintain that, you're going to feel more confident. And I can't tell you how many times students say, Mr. B, you were right. You were right. I felt better. Now, the problem with them is they get so many negatives so often that, you've got to kind of break that pattern, but you can do it through visualization, through changing your body posture, affirmations, the things you say to yourself. And again, I use that timeline therapy too, which is a powerful one, but it's repeating it. You can repeat it a lot more often in your mind than you can in reality, right? So you can begin building that confidence first here in your mind, and then in reality by doing it. So the doing it ends up actually just reinforcing everything you've begun putting into your mind to begin with.
Your book also has a 10-week transformational process. And week by week, you focus on different things: discarding limiting beliefs, embracing inner strengths, forming empowering habits. And you have these so that teens going through this control their emotions, choose positivity, and reframing. Tell us a little bit more about the 10-week transformation process.
Yeah, that is that's the part about the weeding of the garden. So not weeding it the once, right? But weeding it long term. So, and the reason it's 10 weeks is on average, it takes 66 consecutive days to create new habits, right? So 70 days, 10 weeks, doing something every day to be building these habits that are going to help you measure emotions. And I refer to applying heat to your life, which is really what this 10 weeks all about. That's habit, emotion, attitude, training. And I emphasize training because it's long term, right? So over those 10 weeks, the two principal habits, rituals that we are talking about building are a morning ritual and an evening ritual. And the morning ritual, we all have routines we do in the morning. We all have routines we go through at night. They're usually pretty simple and not thought out and not planned. We just kind of fall into them. But the purpose of the morning one is to prepare the mind, body, and spirit for the day ahead. And the purpose of the evening one is to prepare the mind, body, and spirit for rest, recovery, reflection, and growth. And growth means personal growth, but as teenagers, it can also mean physical growth. So those habits, we're going to build components into those that are going to help them and empower them to keep building all these positive traits and characteristics and thinking, because the storms are going to come, right? I mean, when I ran into the storm of losing my wife, my youngest son at the time was in college, and he was a big baseball guy. He was playing at the local university, which was a top 10 Division III school in the country. And he wasn't supposed to even be on that team, right? People said, aren't big enough, strong enough, all that stuff. But he'd been hanging on for 2 years. He was having a good summer. The summer my wife passed away. He came back that fall, and he got cut from the baseball team. So he had a double blow, and he wrote a post at the end of the year, December 31st, that I have a hard time even saying it without tearing up. But ultimately, essentially what he said was, for those who know me, you know that this was a really difficult year. I lost two of the most important things in my life, my mom and baseball. But I'm not going to hang my head. I'm not going to wallow in self-pity. I'm grateful I even had those in my life. 2023, bring it on. And I use that as an example of law because as a dad, I was like, after reading that, tearing up and all, I was like, you got it. I know I didn't always do the teaching the way I've now organized things. Like I'm better. I'm bringing all this to parents now. I didn't always have it in place when I was my own dad. I mean, in my role as a dad. But in that post, he demonstrated a lot of those messages I wanted, in that storms are going to come. What do you have, or what tools are you going to put in place to make it through those, to sail through those? Yeah, I think that answered your question.
No, you did. And that was a very powerful story. Thanks for sharing that. What I get out of your book too is the role that parents play in the raising of their kids. And I like that you kind of give us the idea that parents act as guides, not protectors. It's easy to want to protect your kids from all the pain that the world and life will throw at them. But it's better to help them be a guide for them so they can develop unshakable confidence and resilience. And I like how you do that. And your book really emphasizes the active involvement of parents, creating I like this idea, a nurturing environment for your teens to thrive. Tell us more about how you build that and create that environment for teens.
One of the things when parents come to me, right, they're the ones making the decisions. They're the ones seeing some issues with their teen. The teenager's not going, Mom, Dad, I met this mentor guy that I really think it's the parents who come in. And I really emphasize to them that they really need to go through this with their child, alongside the child. They benefit too. They get the same benefits as their child with looking inside themselves to see what might be going there. And that whole process really builds a powerful relationship. And, teen years are hard. And for some kids, it's even harder than others in opening up to parents and all that. And this is an opportunity to grow individually and together. But parents have to be prepared and ready to kind of model it. And there's challenges through this process, trying to get their teens to follow through and do the assignments they need to do. And when I was, set this up to do this, I understand the challenge of time, right? Again, I was a father of 4, very involved in all kinds of things. So I understand these challenges, but the truth of the matter is time's not an excuse because we all have the same amount. We have 1,440 minutes a day. The question isn't whether I have enough time. The question is, how do I want to prioritize that time? And that can be a challenge. That's one of the reasons I start with that. I mentioned that in the book. That's where it kind of begins is looking at how you're spending time, how to prioritize it. And that's kind of the parent's role. And then they just need to, again, it's encouraging, but also being firm and reminding them about benefits. And it's not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not being a real drill instructor type, but it's being there to lead by example, keep encouraging, and giving them enough room to explore on their own. My dad used to tell this story that I don't remember it, but it stuck with me, and I was very blessed to have the parents I had. But he talked about me being maybe a 10-year-old, and we were on a family trip, big city. I don't remember whether DC or New York City or what have you. And we were in, again, a big, I don't know whether a huge mall, like Grand Central Station, whatever, but I needed to go to the bathroom, right? And he said, all right, here's an opportunity to see if he can make it on his own. So there are, maps of where we are and where the nearest bathroom is. And he takes me over and think you could find it on your own. And I'm like, yeah. Without me knowing it, he, of course, followed me off in a distance to make sure, but he let me go on my own to kind of, can I do it? To feel like that. And I didn't remember it, but I could see kind of the results of that little lesson as I looked back at some other lessons that, like, oh, that explains this and that explains that. And as parents, we need to be able to do that. And there's a lot of research coming up. Jonathan Haidt has quite a bit about the loss of play, the loss of that freedom. We're trying to we become overprotective for kids, and they aren't learning through their own failures as much as they need to. So that would be my biggest lesson is we can't keep them from, quote, failing. They need to experience that. And what we're doing in this mentorship program is not preventing them from failing, but giving them the tools so when they do experience it, they don't melt. There's a moniker that this generation's gotten that's not a very complimentary one, is snowflakes, right? The first sign of a little bit of heat and they melt away, right? And it's not complimentary, but there's some truth to that. And so as parents, we need to give them the tools to be able to handle that.
That's good. It's really important too. So how's your book being received? I'm getting positive feedback, which I love. I obviously would love it to get even more and more copies, right? Get millions of copies sold. But the thing that gets me most is when somebody says, you know what, I was able to learn this from that, or I took this message from that. And it's kind of like the work I did with students. The biggest, I still remember one time a student, we were up, my wife and I, and there was 6 of us total, all of us educators, and we're up in Bar Harbor, Maine, which was like 3 hours from where we live. And all of a sudden there's a Mr. B, Mr. B, and this kid comes running across the street, pushing a baby carriage with his fiance right behind him. And he's like, Mr. B, you remember me? And I'm like, of
course I remember you, Charlie. Of course I remember you. And, he had been a really tough kid, and he wanted so much to just tell me that he was working. He was in construction industry. He had a little baby girl. He was engaged to be married. Things were going good. And those little moments, like somebody saying, I took this from your book, that's what makes it all worthwhile.
That does make it worthwhile. So I'm going to ask you my other favorite question. What legacy do you want to leave behind?
Oh boy, that's a great question. When I look at the students I've had, my own children, their friend group, they're the legacy. So the messages that I bring forward about the importance of your mindset, taking control of your own life, being responsible, the importance of relationships and the power that we have to build good, positive relationships, seeing that played out in that next generation, that's my legacy.
That's amazing. On season 6, we have a new thing we end the show with, and that is pick a number between 1 and 10 for a surprise question.
So say that again. Pick a number between 1 and 10 for what?
A surprise question.
Oh, all right. Well, between 1 and 10, 6 has always been a lucky number, so we'll go with 6.
The question is, what is the weirdest text you've ever received?
The weirdest thanks. Oh boy. That's a great question. Huh. I don't know if weird's the right word, but what I'll say is the one that stands out the most, maybe the most emotionally charged. And after my wife passed, a former student of mine who kept in touch with over the years through Facebook and others, she has a great story to tell. Came from a really crazy family background and all this, but just before Christmas time, 2022, she lost her brother and her grandmother just before Christmas time. And there's a long history of depression and anxiety and drug and alcohol abuse in her family that she had always avoided. And she was going into a dark place. And she knew my wife had passed, and reached out. And, we sort of communicated, sharing each other's grief and all. And in that process, she had said, the foundation that we gave her in middle school is what she kind of fell back on. And the reason I say, weird isn't the right term, but emotional, because it was at a time where I was beginning to question, like, where am I going to go with what I'm doing now? Because part of the reason I was doing this was, my wife and I, in my retirement, this was going to be kind of my second stream of income. And we both were educators and could work together in this. It was going to be kind of a dual package thing. And I kind of lost my direction. And through the grieving process, that statement, it all, like, I got my mission kind of got focused. So I think that's not the weirdest, but the most emotional thanks.
Wow, powerful, powerful story. Chuck, where can people find you, and where can they buy Confidence for Teens, A New Chapter for the Family?
You can find me at CoachChuck360.com, CoachChuck360.com, and they can reach out to me. They can send me a text or what have you. Just put your show name down on it, and free gift. And I can make the book available for shipping and handling. If they reach out to me that way, that's all they'd pay. But of course, if you want to pay full price, you can get it on Amazon. So by all means that, but I'd be more than willing to, you know, for shipping only, get it to them if they want to reach out to me that way. That's CoachChuck360.com.
Well, Chuck, thank you for sharing your wisdom, your heart with us today. For those listening, if you want to learn more about Chuck's work or grab a copy of his new book, Confidence with Teens, check out his links in the show notes. Until next time, keep building bridges that bring hope and transformation. Chuck, thanks so much for being a great guest on the podcast.
Oh, thank you. It was an honor.
Do you know that most entrepreneurs hit a revenue ceiling and have no idea why? They're working harder, spending more money, running more ads, but revenue stays flat. My friend Dr. Noah St. John calls this the invisible break. He's giving our listeners a free revenue ceiling audit to help you see what's really holding you back. You'll get a free 30-day membership to NoahBot, giving you access to Dr. Noah's 30 years of experience to help you reach your next level. But hurry, because there's only 50 available this month. So if you're tired of being stuck at the same revenue level and want to finally break through, get your free revenue ceiling audit at drnoahvault.com in the affiliate link that'll be listed in the show notes.
Thanks for listening to Becoming Bridge Builder. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help support the podcast, please subscribe and share it with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at @bkeithhaney and on Getter and Twitter @RevHeadpin. Thanks again and tune in next time.